All right, so we're back in the world of the first Descendant, and I have a pretty awesome build for you, which is Hailey, obviously. As you can see on screen now, I just put together my Hailey build, and she is quite a monster of a Descendant. Besides being one of the worst Descendants to farm in the game right now, she is by far one of the strongest Descendants to have, and looking at all the damage that she's doing, I can absolutely destroy every boss in very little effort, while also having really good mana sustained and being able to be fairly defensive. I made a really solid Hailey build that I feel is going to become pretty meta. At least something of this variation will be meta, and to have her on your team is going to be something super invaluable because of her strength. I'm not sure how long this intro is going to be, but I think at this point everything is dead, so let's dive into the build. Alright, so we are on the build section, and just like I do in some videos, especially when there's a new Descendant or a change, I wanted to give you guys my thoughts on Hailey so you can have a better understanding. I want to give you guys just a little bit of feedback just in case players want to know. And my thoughts on Hailey is pretty clear. She has instantly power crept Lepic. I don't want to be the guy that says I told you so, but for all those who got baited into building burst build Lepic, well, here you go. This is your new counter, and she does it so much better. Currently, she has the ability to sustain her mana. She can actually build defense. As you can see right now, I have 8k HP with 780,000 shield. I mean 780,000, what am I talking about? 781 shield, and then we have about 20,000 defense, and I am absolutely decimating enemies fairly easy. So yeah, she's a really strong Descendant right now, very powerful, and honestly it's kind of annoying that Lepic got power crept so hard, but it is expected. He just wasn't going to be a character that has longevity, and her being able to fully sustain and obviously manage her cooldowns is pretty damn good. So she's a really powerful Descendant. If I'm being honest, she is a must build in terms of DPS prowess. If you're looking for someone who can kill bosses by herself, she can do it, and she has enough cake for everyone. So she's just super OP compared to Lepic. Anyway, she's super OP, one of the best Descendants in the game right now. Let's go over her skills, and I'm gonna be brief on it because I'm sure you guys know it at this point, but let's talk about them. Her first ability is kind of weird and not very good at the moment. Maybe I haven't figured it out, but basically you fire cryo rounds at enemies in front of you, and you deal some damage, and you'll inflict cryo on them. You can stack up a max count of 9 per target, and it's okay. It doesn't have a duration on the screen. It doesn't say the duration, but it's okay. The problem with it is it has a long cast time. It requires you to physically look at the monster, and once again, the question will always come up, why play her when you can play Bunny to do the same thing much better? So once again, it's okay skill. I'll try to build around it, but she's a bossing Descendant, so just being honest. Next we have Storm Snare. This is a ability that scales very much with your skill powers, skill crit, all that kind of stuff, and it'll actually scale with this Cold Fury. And basically what this does is you'll pull out a huge rifle, you'll do a little AoE that like pushes enemies away, and then you'll do a ton of damage whenever you hit with it. It's a really cool skill, and it does a ton of damage, and then it does all the cryo stuff and the flash freeze stuff. That stuff don't matter too much, if I'm being honest, because things just die when you shoot it, so all those other stats don't mean anything in my opinion, but for the most part you just blow something up. It's really nice. Next you have Chill Fury, or Cold Fury, sorry, and what this does is it just gives you a ton of crit, tons of firearm pin. It reduces your move speed, which is unfortunate, and once you reach your maximum you'll get additional skill crit hit damage as well as firearm crit damage, and this makes it so your number 2 skill or your W skill and your 4 skill do extra damage, and you can crit really easy with it. For example, I'll just show you an example with my Afterglow Sword, because that's what I use personally. As you can see, my Afterglow has 71% crit, and then whenever I activate this, and we get our stacks, and hopefully it's retroactive. Oh, there it goes. It's already there. So we already get our crit, already maxed out, and we're doing tons of damage, so we have permanent crit, so it's really good. Even for my Enduring Legacy, it's almost max crit too, which is pretty good. I don't need Enzo buff to do it, which is cool. So really powerful firearm user. Unfortunately, the negative, as you can see, is it drains your mana, so it can be a little hard to maintain. We solve for this by shooting weak points, and we'll go over that in a second. For her ultimate, she's going to pull out her unique weapon. This scales based off of your weapon that you're holding in your hand, and so that's why a lot of people are using snipers with high crit, because that's what, you know, it scales off of. You have a set amount of bullets, which will be 4, but whenever I pull it out, obviously I have 7, and that's for a combination of reasons, mainly because of how I build my Afterglow sniper, because I want to have as much shots as possible. And if you have shots after, the cooldown will be really low. As you see, I have 7 shots, so it's really low, really fast. It comes off a cooldown, and it doesn't cost mana, which makes her very strong compared to someone like Lepic, for example, because he requires mana to do it, and he has mana sustain issues. So I'm going to just show you an example of the mana sustain that she has, just for the sake of the video. Are they weak to ice? I want them to be strong to ice. It'll be better. But as you can see here, I'm draining mana, and then shooting them in the head whenever we have crit. I mean, you don't need to wait till you have full, but I'm just doing it because why not? But as you can see, my mana is really high, very easy to sustain. And the cooldown, as you saw there, because I used 2 shots, so it's really good. Quick tech, her passive is a passive that makes it so whenever you shoot, well, whenever you're at a distance, it'll actually give you more firearm damage. But as you can see there at the bottom right, my thing is like kind of blue. So it's pushing them back, and as you can see there is more blue. And this is basically telling you the max amount of damage, like where you reach the max. And this is about where you want to be when you fire at things. So this is where I'll get the max damage from. As you can see there, the damage went up quite a bit. I think that was like a 6 million damage shot or more. It's pretty decent. My build is built for Colossus damage, but even still, it still does some decent damage. My Afterglow is not built properly or 100% yet, and it still can absolutely decimate bosses, but we'll finish that in the upcoming video when we perfect her. That's pretty much it. We'll quickly look at the passive. Weak point damage, increase extra distance, more damage, more weak point. It's really good character. She's built really well. Let's go over our Afterglow, because that's kind of important, and I kind of want to touch on this before toxicity comes to my channel. I'm using the Afterglow Sword. You can use the Piercing Light if you want to. It has better base damage. This one has better base crit and better base well, close weak point or something like that. So I like this one because I enjoy the crit damage and I like it better. Just going over what we have here, because it's not much because we haven't fully built it. But that's the thing with Hailey. She doesn't need much. Like 2 katas and a half-built Afterglow. And she's better than like most Descendants in the game, which is pretty insane. So that's really cool. Anyway, we have Rifling Reinforcement. We use Weak Point Expansion because this gives us a big burst of damage on your shot every 10 seconds. You should definitely use this. That's why my opening shot does so much damage. We're using Focus Fire because we want the weak point damage. We have Weak Point Sight because we want more weak point damage. We have 1 crit, and this helps us get to the crit threshold. Actually, we probably don't even need it. I'm curious, do we even need it? We'll do a test on stream on the video just so you guys can see just how broken this character's kit is, because she's got the OP. Do we even need it? At max stacks? We're almost max without it. So we actually don't even need it. That's kind of funny. I may adjust the build in the future, but we actually don't even need the crit. We can put something else here. She actually doesn't need crit to make this build work. If you want to shoot the weapon naturally, then obviously you may want to have crit for it, but you don't need it if you want to do her whole thing. So just keep that in mind. When I get around to it, I'll do a perfected build, but we have Expanded Weapon Charge, and then we have Concentrate Support Ammo. This one could be the weak point one, but I already had this one level, so I didn't want to do it. But then we have Expanded Weapon Charge. This is gonna be enough to give you 7 shots when you have these 2 in, and as you probably saw in the footage, I can kill everything super easy, so it doesn't even matter how you built this. As long as you have weak point damage and these 2 ammos, you can just shoot and kill everything. It's really nice. For our stats on our Afterglow Sword, we're going to be going with weak point damage because weak point's really big, firearm crit hit damage, firearm crit hit rate, and bonus firearm versus Colossus. I have not tested how different things work because honestly I've had these stats since I made the weapon like a month ago, and I just never finished the build, but this is what we're running and it's pretty good. All right, so now we are on the build section for my Descendant, and this is my subscribe tab. Consider subscribing. I done goofed. If you haven't can tell, as you can see here, these 2 should have been right above each other, but I goofed, and well, I'm not investing anymore, so ideally probably have these 2 swap, but this is my thing if you want to screenshot it and build it this way. And for my bossing, just keep in mind, if you want to add more power to your Descendant, feel free to do so. I am a creator who tries to make content with the idea of like the average player and like not just showing you guys the perfect runs. There's plenty of that on the platform. If you want to like jump up your damage and bump up your damage, sure. But for me, I'm building with functionality in mind in case you miss a shot or something, which is practical, or something goes different. Someone in your party makes the boss enrage. Whatever the case is, I build with that in mind. But again, you can kind of customize it the way you want. Anyways, let's quickly go over how I'm building this. So we have kicking. You can use whatever you want here. We didn't have to kata this, so that's really nice. We don't have a skill module. She doesn't have one yet. Next, we're using skill insight. This is purely for your C ability. So that's what this is scaling off of. We have skill concentration because again, this is going to give us a ton of skill crit hit damage, and it's really nice. We're using focus on chill because we do want the cooldown. So you see, I'll do something like this, use it. I'm not taking my time on shots. I'm shooting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm shooting, right? She's out of animation, and just like that, we're right back into it. Use the skill. You probably won't instantly go into C. You'll probably reposition. You're probably getting shot at, whatever the case is, and then we'll go back into it. And that's kind of how I want to make the build. I want it to be functional, not just one burst killed everything, 20 million damage. Nah, I don't care for that. I already killed things in 2 shots anyway. So I use HP amplification because I want the extra HP. I use dangerous ambush because when they're down, she does a fuck ton of damage. Nimble fingers for cooldown. Front lines for more crit damage so that the skill can do a lot of damage, and that's why I do 10 million whenever I shoot them. Like naturally, at least the weak ones who are resistant to my damage, naturally I do like 7 million depending on who I'm shooting at, of course. We use MP conversion because we want the cooldown lower. We lose a little MP, but we can sustain because she's really good. And then we use spear and shield, and this gives us a good amount of defense and skill power. I love defense, so I want to put this in. And then last but not least, focus on singular for a little bit more damage, so it's really nice. For our reactors, we're going to be using a singularity frost reactor. Unfortunately, the devs did what they do, where they basically release a character and they don't release the proper thing in rotation. So I went to the frozen valley here, and this is the location where this mission here, command relay, this is where you farm those little ion particles or whatever they're called from the commanders. I just farmed it here, and eventually it dropped a purple version with singularity on it and crit. Got a little lucky, I guess. Actually, the crit is fine. It's not the best, but I think it's fine because I do need it for my skills, because my skill crit isn't the best. But I crit a lot, so it's nice. And we have Colossus, damage when attacking Colossus, so it's good. When I do the perfected build, I'm gonna do a golden one because there's a lot more damage to be had. Next, we're using Slayer. Love Slayer says it's really good. We're using the MP recovery out of combat as well as max HP. Then we have max MP, which is actually pretty important to the build. I would argue the most important thing to the build. And then HP recovery modifier. We actually picked this one up today, defense and MP recovery modifier. And then finally we got max shield and shield recovery modifier. We're gonna fix this one because this one's imperfected, and I want perfected components, but this is where it's at. This is the build, and there you have it, guys. That is my Hailey build. She is like probably one of the craziest characters to release in the game as of yet. Better than Valby, about as good as Luna, probably even a little bit better because Luna does have a really good kit. Definitely worth building. She is annoying to farm, but definitely worth building when you can. And in a future video, I'll be doing a perfected build where we can get a good amount of defense as well as damage whenever I can perfect the build. But yeah, that's the build. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one very soon.